Okay, so in the notes we're going to look at today, we're going to talk about solving law of sines, the ambiguous case. So I know you're like, well, Ms. Tapia, we already did law of sines. No, you're absolutely right. We did. Law of sines was here. We talked about how to solve. We specifically said whenever you have an angle, given angle, with a side directly across from it, so an actual side length, you can use law of sines. And that's still true here. The only difference is there's now multiple triangles that we could potentially get. So whenever you have, for instance here, we had two angles and a non-included side. That told us that we could use law of sines. For this page in particular, it's going to focus on one type of congruence type, and that's going to be side-side angle. So when you have something that has two sides and a non-included angle, this is when you're going to have to use law of sines. So I'm going to talk briefly about this little picture that you have here. I'm not going to test you guys on that picture and say label it. I'm not going to do it. I just want you to understand why we're doing this. So for the obtuse triangle, we've technically already solved the one solution. You've done that before. That's what the other page was for. What we're looking at is whenever you have problems that are a no solution. What that means is you have an angle A, which is obtuse, which means it's greater than 90 degrees, and that your angle your side length that's directly across from angle A would be less than or smaller than side B. That's what that means. So when that happens, we have an example that shows no solution or a no triangle. Same thing if you were to have an acute angle. So notice here, angle A is an acute angle on all of the pictures. We've already solved problems that look like this. Problems that have 90 degrees in it, we just use SOHCAHTOA. And then for triangles that look like this, we just use law of sines. We did that on the last page and over the past couple days. We also, for problems that have angle A as being acute, this one would show a no solution or no triangle. So that means if your side length directly across from angle A is less than your height, which is h, which should be perpendicular to your base. Same thing if you were to have two solutions. Two solutions literally means two triangles. So if you have two triangles, what you could have is one triangle that literally is the entire piece here, and another triangle that is this guy here. Keep in mind, for all of these, so if A is greater than or less than 90 degrees, and if A is greater than 90 degrees on your unit circle, you don't have to graph this out, that could be found in quadrants 1 and 2. So in quadrants 1 and 2, when your angles are going to be between 0 and 180, that's going to be in the first two quadrants. So whenever you're thinking of these triangles, I want you to think of that as well. Especially since in the two triangles or the two solutions we have, you could have one big triangle where you have an acute angle. So that would mean it's in the first quadrant. And then your second triangle here, B, is technically obtuse. It's bigger than 180, which means it'll be found in quadrant 2. What that does is it's still going to give you a value. It's just going to be on two separate triangles. So they're not going to be the exact same. You're trying to compensate for both of them that show up in quadrants 1 and quadrant 2. As of right now, you're probably looking at me like, Ms. Top, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's okay. We're about to go through it. So with all of this stuff at the top, this is just explaining why we're doing it. Further explaining it are the steps that we have here. So steps 1 through 3. These are your steps. So these are literally what we're going to use today to actually solve. So I'm not going to bother with reading out the steps. That would just be wasting my time and yours. Instead, we're just going to start by simplifying one of the problems. So I'm going to go ahead and start with example 1 at the bottom of the page. And example 1 says that to determine, first, we need to determine the congruency type. So that means, is it side, side, side? Is it side, angle, side? What's the congruent statement? And how many triangles does it have? It specifically says do not solve. When it says to solve a triangle, what are you finding? All your angles and all of your sides. So that's what we would technically do. Since it says not to solve for all of the angles and sides, we're not going to do that last piece. Okay, so for example 1, first thing I want you to do is draw out a triangle. Your triangle might look a little different from mine. That's okay. And I want you to label it as D, E, and we're missing an angle, so I'm just going to label it F. D, E, and F. Angle D is 42 degrees. Side D is 5 units. Side E is 7 units. We first need to figure out what's the congruency type. Okay, if you look at the triangle, you have an angle with the side length directly across from it. Do you agree with that? That's why we could use law of sines. The next thing we need to do is we need to figure out what type of congruent statement this is. You have an angle and two sides, or you could say two sides and a non-included angle. That is the exact same statement as what we have on the top. Side-side angle. Two sides and a non-included angle. When you have this congruent statement, you have to follow all three of these steps. Give me a nod or shake. Does that make sense so far? Okay, let's go through the steps. So the first step said to draw the triangle. Okay, that part's done. We're good. The next step says to find your fruit angle. Okay, I know you're like, Ms. Tapia, why are you bringing up fruit? This is going to help you remember this abbreviation. To find your fruit angle, you need to use the angle opposite your given side. Or, if that's too much for you to remember, apples, oranges, grapes, and strawberries. I don't usually need to remember that as the actual fruits. I just usually will say angle opposite given side. So for this first question, question 1, I'm going to first find my fruit angle. So what is your fruit? If I could spell fruit correctly, fruit angle. And that is the angle opposite your given side. So if you look at this triangle, this is what we're going to look at. Here's your side. Is there an angle that's actually across from it? What's the angle across from 5 units? 42 degrees. Okay, that one's good. That's not my angle opposite your given side. Here's another side that was given. What's the angle measurement across from it? E. Do we know what this angle measure is, though? No. So that's our angle opposite our given side. That's your fruit angle. Okay, so again, we're not solving the entire triangle. We're just trying to figure out how many triangles we have. We found the congruent statement. That's here. We need to figure out how many triangles we actually have. So for this fruit angle, let's actually find angle E. So for angle E, we said that we could use law of sines. So sine of 42 degrees over 5 is going to equal sine of E over 7. I'm going to multiply both sides by 7. So I'm going to times 7. It's multiplying it. So we'll have 7 times sine of 42 degrees over 5 is going to equal sine of E. I'm putting this on here because I don't have enough space to use the back of my page. If you need more space, just let me know. How do I isolate E? Sine inverse on each side. So sine inverse. So in my calculator, I'm going to go ahead and pull the rest of this up here. I'm going to have sine inverse. Let's put that way. Sine inverse of 7 times sine of 42 degrees over 5. And that's going to equal angle E. Let's figure out what angle E is. So in your triangle, or in your calculator, I'm going to go ahead and go into and add the calculator portion on my new document. And I'm going to change this from radians into degree. So guys, make sure you change this from radians into degree. Once it's in degree mode, I'm going to take all of the information that I have here and I'm going to substitute it in. So we're going to have sine inverse of 7 times sine. Let me actually put my fraction. Fraction 7 times sine of 42 degrees over 5. All right, so it's going to be 69.5181. I'll worry about rounding it at the end. For right now, I'm just writing out what I'm getting for my answer. Okay, so I've done the first part. Let me look back up here. I found my fruit angle. I did the angle opposite your given side. If you have an error, did we get an error message in our calculator? Okay, so that doesn't apply to us. It says if you get an answer, though, you're going to continue to solve for all of the missing parts of your triangle. So since we found 69.5181, we could finish solving for the other missing sides. Giselle, what were the other missing sides in this triangle? We just found E. What else is missing here? Angle F, and what else? Side F. So side DE, which is the same as side F. Okay, so those would be the only two things you would have to continually find. Okay, so the last part of this says, because we need to figure out how many triangles, is to find your supplemental fruit angle. Remember how I said that these are mainly in quadrants 1 and 2? We're trying to see so far, 69.5, what quadrant is that in? It's in which one? First one, it's in the first quadrant. So we need to figure out, is there another angle that will be in your second quadrant that actually will be less than 180 degrees? So that's where we're finding the supplemental fruit angle. So step 2 is to find your supplemental fruit angle. And you guys know how I am. I'll put this in parentheses. I'm going to label supplemental fruit as SF because I don't like rewriting that over and over. We're going to take 180 and we're going to subtract it from the original fruit angle that we had found. Okay, well, I labeled it. Your fruit angle is E. E is 69.5181. let me take my calculator and subtract 180 minus 69.5181. That's going to be 110.482. Okay, so that's not the entire part. I need to now take the supplemental fruit angle and the given angle. This is supposed to say angle, so add that L. It's supposed to say angle. We're going to take the supplemental fruit angle and the given angle, and we're going to see if it's either greater than or less than 180. So look up for just a second. If your angle, when I add both of these, are greater than 180, that means you're only going to have one triangle that you need to solve. If you add both of them and it's less than 180, that means you're going to have two triangles that you'll have to solve. So if I look back at the original problem, Jesus, what's my given angle? What was the angle that was given in the original problem? 42 degrees. So we're going to take the, I'm going to put right here for step 3, I'm going to put second triangle, and I'm going to put a question mark. I need to see if that's what we can find. We're going to take that 110.482, and we're going to add it to 42 degrees. All right, I can use my calculator or my brain. It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to take that last answer and add it to 42. That's going to be 152.482. 152.482. Is that greater than or less than 180? It's less than. So what does that mean? There's two triangles. So for this question, that means that it's less than 180. Double check that I wrote the correct symbol. Less than 180. That means that you're going to have, there is a second triangle. And before you leave today, we're going to see exactly how to solve for that second triangle. Let's do the same thing, but for question 2. For question 2, I'm going to give you a head start. I'm going to draw out my triangle first. And let's just label A, B, and C. There you go. There's your triangle. Go ahead and label this. What is it going to look like? All right, so we have 73 degrees. Side B is 8 units. Side C is 9 units. So even though I'm not putting my units on every single thing, I'm trying to get you in the idea of seeing where your units are so you don't mess this up later. All right, so I'm still following the steps that are above. The first step said to draw. We already did that. I now need to identify my fruit angle, which is the angle opposite your given side. Melissa, look at your diagram that we kind of drew. What's your angle opposite your given side? You're looking for a missing angle opposite of a given side. It would be angle C. You're looking for the angle that is pretty much missing that angle measure. So it has a side length, but it's missing that angle measure. Perfect. So we need to find angle C. Melissa, how are you going to find angle C? Let me move this over. How are you going to find angle C? What method? Yep, law of sines. Let's use sine of B, which is 73 degrees, over 8. And we're going to set that equal to sine of C over 9. I'm going to multiply both sides by 9. And Melissa, how do I get sine to go away? How do I get C by itself? So C is going to equal, let me take my calculator and plug it in. So we're going to have sine inverse of 9 times sine of 73. I'm going to divide that by, since I didn't divide it to begin with, 8. Double check. I plugged this in right? 9 sine of 73 over 8. Okay. It looks good. Let me try something else. If I was to look just at the information inside of your parentheses, that gives me 1.07584. Okay, let me look at that. This is sine inverse of 1.07584. Why did it give me an undefined answer here? Say it one more time. It is out of your domain. Remember this inverse page whenever we were graphing this stuff and we were talking about where the restrictions are? Yeah, that comes back. So the sine inverse, the reason why, you're absolutely right with getting this undefined answer. The reason why is because it's outside of your domain. The domain for sine inverse is between -1 and +1. This is just right outside of it. So at 1.07, it's barely missed it. So your C is undefined. That is not wrong. What does that mean, though? Look back at the top. If you get that error message, what does that mean? There's no triangle. There's no solution, which means there's no triangle. So I'm going to put that there's no triangle slash no solution. This would be your answer. When that happens, I literally want you to stop. There's nothing else you can do. When you get that undefined answer, there's nothing else you can do. When you're ready, let's flip it over to next page. Let's look at example 3. All right, so on the next page, example 3, all of the problems for questions 3 through 8 say that you need to solve all solutions. What does it mean to find all solutions? What are you finding? What are you finding? All angles and what else? All angles and your sides. That's what you're finding. So especially if you have 2 triangles, I expect you to find every single angle and every single side. All right, let's go ahead and draw this out. So I'm going to draw out my triangle. We're going to have L, M, and I'll use N since that's the next letter in the alphabet. Angle L is 63 degrees. Side L is 18. I'm going to put units behind it. Side M is 25 units. All right, I need to follow my first step. David, on the last page, after you draw your triangle, what are you supposed to find? Okay, so for your fruit angle, that is the angle opposite your given side. What angle are you looking at if it's the angle opposite your given side? Say it again. Angle M. So let's go ahead and find angle M. So can we use law of sines? Yes, and I want to double check. I didn't do this for the last question, I don't think, but you want to make sure you have 2 sides and a non-included angle. So I'm going to write this as side angle. I'm going to go back really quick. On this question here for number 2, you have 2 sides and a non-included angle. This is side angle. That's why we're using this method. Anytime you have 2 sides and a non-included angle, you want to make sure you follow all of the steps that I've highlighted in blue. Okay, so now that I've gone through that side angle, we have to do this method. First thing I need to do is do law of sines. So sine of 63 degrees over 18 is going to equal sine of M over 25. I'm going to multiply both sides by 25. That is a 25. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and put my work up here. I'll have 25 sine M, or not sine M, sine 63 over 18 is equal to sine M. David, how do I get rid of the sine? Sine inverse on each side. So in my calculator, I'm going to calculate M. All right, so let's double check this. In my calculator, we have sine inverse of my fraction. Please put the fraction first. I got an undefined answer again. Carlos, what does that mean? There's no triangle for you to solve. If the value you have inside the parentheses is undefined, that means it's outside of your domain. It's either greater than -1 or +1. So I'm going to put M is undefined, which means there is no triangle for you to solve. There is no triangle. There is no solution. That would be your answer. On tests and quizzes, guys, that's all I want to see. Just tell me that your answer is undefined and then write out that there is no triangle. Perfect. Cool. We just found one with no triangle. And now, I wonder what we're going to get next. For question 4, we're going to graph this out. So, not graph, I keep saying graph. We're going to draw this out. We're going to have G, H, and I'll put I. G is 105. Obviously, this is not drawn to scale because this should be obtuse. Side G is 73 units. Side H is 55 units. All right, let's solve it. So, Carlos, first step from the last page says I need to find my angle opposite my given side. So I need to find my fruit angle. What's the angle opposite your given side? angle H. First, I need to double check. Is this side-side angle? Two sides, non-included angle? Yes, this is two sides and a non-included angle. Always check that, guys. Don't just say, oh, I have law of sines, I could just use my ratio. No, check. Once you check, that's when you know you could follow the steps. That's why I'm doing angle opposite your given side. So sine of 105 over 73 will equal sine of h over 55. All right, again, we're going to have to multiply both sides by 55. So 55 times sine 105 over 73 is going to equal sine h. How am I going to get h by itself? Sine inverse on each side. So h is going to equal, let me use my calculator, I'm going to have sine inverse of my fraction, 55 times sine of 105 over 73. Okay, well, this one's not a no solution. This one actually has one. So 46.6983. 46.6983 degrees. I'm going to wait to round until the very end, just so that way I don't have to keep rounding for every part. Perfect. Remember how at the top of the page it told you to find all sides and all angles? We're going to have to keep doing that. So, Edgar, at the top of the page up here for angle H, we have 46.6983 degrees. What can I find next? Say it again. The other angle. How am I going to find angle I? Triangle sum theorem. You're the first person today to say it actually correctly. This is your triangle sum theorem. Good job. So we're going to take angle G plus angle H plus angle I and set it equal to 180. All of the steps that I'm doing, guys, is not to waste ink in my pens. It's to make sure that you understand how to get the correct answer on your tests and quizzes. So write all the steps, even the triangle sum theorem part. We're going to add, so I'm going to take that 46.6983 plus 105. I put it a little out of order, but you're still adding. Angle I should equal 180. All right, so angle I is going to equal, I'm going to write that whole decimal. So we're going to have 46.6983. I'm just highlighting it and bringing it down. I'm going to add 105, and then I'll subtract 180 from that. So minus the last answer. So this will give me 28.3017. That's my angle I. Cool, Edgar. We found the other angle. Now what? How can I find, is there any other things that are missing? Because maybe I'm done. Little I. That's the little I. We need to find that next. So up at the top of the page, I'm going to put angle I is 28.3017. I need to find little I. So the side directly across from that angle. Edgar, how would I find that? Use a different color. How would I find that? We could use law of cosines. Could we also use law of sines? Yeah, we could use either one. So especially since angle G and side G are already given, I'm going to use law of sines because I think that might be a little easier for you. So I'm going to write out sine of 105. Oops, let me actually write out what I'm doing. I'm finding lowercase I by law of sines. So that way you know how we found that later on. So sine of 105 over 73 is going to equal sine of big I over side I. Side I. All right, sorry. So angle I is actually 28.3, so I could plug that in. And don't forget, since that's a decimal, I'm going to have to use that entire ugly decimal. This one I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to do 73 sine of 28.3 degrees equals I times sine of 105. Edgar, how would I get I by itself here? What would I have to do? Are you sure? I want to get I by itself. Divided by sine. There you go. Be careful. Divide it by sine of 105. So I is going to equal, you get my calculator. I'm going to put my fraction in. You do not need an inverse. I'm glad that Edgar caught that. We're going to do 73 sine of the last answer. So I'm just going to scroll up, highlight it, and bring it down. and I'm going to divide it by sine of 105. So this is going to be 35.8313. If your answer looks different than mine, please tell me. And this is in units because it's a side. All right, those are all the missing pieces from my triangle. So what I'm going to do right now in black, I'm going to write out my measures in triangle 1, because who knows, I might have a second triangle. Angle H is 46 point, I'm going to round it to each of them to the 10th place. So just one decimal place. Angle I is 28.3 degrees, and side I is 35.8 units. All of this, you actually do orange. All of this would be your answer if it asked you for your triangle for the first one. All right, let me look back on the first page. We did all this stuff. I forgot the whole purpose of what we were trying to do. On the first page, once you find the first part, we now need to find your supplemental fruit angle. Whenever you have side-side angle, you have to check, do you have a second triangle? To do that, you're going to find your supplemental fruit angle. So take 180 and subtract it from your actual fruit angle. So down here, for step 4, I'm going to do the supplemental fruit angle, which is SF. I'm going to take 180 and I'm going to subtract it from your fruit angle. And what's the fruit angle? I forgot. .6983. Yes, it's angle H. That is your fruit angle. So if you need to label that fruit angle again, do that. So we're going to subtract it from angle H. So in my calculator, luckily for you, I already have it. So that 46.6983, that's up here at the top. I'm just going to scroll up until it's highlighted, and I'm going to copy it down. So my supplemental fruit angle is 133.302. That doesn't tell me, though, if I have a second triangle or not. Remember, we use that to help find if we have a second triangle. So what we're going to do is use the given fruit supplemental fruit angle plus the given and see if it's greater than or less than 180. So for step 5, this is where you determine, do you have a second triangle? We're going to take the supplemental fruit plus the given, and we're going to add it. All right, so the supplemental fruit angle is 133.302. Anya, what was the given angle? The given angle in the original problem, 105. So we're going to add 105 to that. Ooh, goodness. Is that going to be greater than or less than 180? Greater than. If you add 105 to that last answer, it's going to be 238.302. Since this is greater than 180 degrees, that means there is no second triangle. Once you see that message, you can stop. That is the only thing that you have to check for that. Give me a nod or shake. Does this make sense? All right, so we have seen a no triangle, so no solution. We've seen literally when there's just one triangle, which is the same as a one solution. All this space for question 5, it better not be a no solution. So I want you guys to at least start out the beginning portion of this. So I'm going to I'm going to draw this out. This will be RST. I see a angle R, a side S. I'm just going to use T as the next letter in the alphabet. 30 degrees, 15 units for side R. Side S is 20 units. 15 units, 20 units. And first, before you guys start doing fruit angles and all that stuff, do we even need to use the ambiguous case? Do we need to do that here? How do we know if we need to use it? What do we need to check? Side angle. Do you have two sides and a non-included angle? That's why you're doing it. You're not just doing this just because Ms. Tapia told you to. You need to check on your tests and quizzes. Do you have two sides and a non-included angle? If 30 was in between both of these sides, you wouldn't need to do this. You would do something else. All right, go ahead and start. I want you guys to do everything for triangle 1 because you probably are going to have first triangle. I'll give you about a 3-minute head start. Find everything you need for triangle 1. So since we have side angle, Joseph, what was your angle opposite your given side? That's your fruit angle. Sorry, what angle were you looking at? Angle S. And you solve for angle S. Give me the decimal for it. 41.8183? 03. Okay. All right. Sounds good. That will be my angle S. And for the next part, step 2 is to actually find your other angle in that. What can you do to find that other angle, Joseph? Triangle sum theorem. Even though I'm not going through all the steps, I've done this for almost every question, guys, so I shouldn't need to rewrite every single step for this. But you guys should definitely have it in your notes. What's angle T going to equal, Joseph? All right, cool. And the last step, step 3, is to figure out what side T is. So you have angle S, angle T, both of these. You're missing side T. So to find side T, Joseph, how would you find that?
Law of sines.
There you go, law of sines. So you should have set it up as sine of 108.19 degrees over little t is going to equal sine of 30 degrees over 15. Keep in mind, guys, you don't have to use the two sides and angle stuff that's given. You don't have to use angle R and side R. I just use it because it's already there and I don't have to worry about decimals. If you used angle S and side S, you would need to use this ugly decimal here. It's not bad. You would just have to use it, though. For t, little t, I got 28.5008 for my units. Does that look like yours, Joseph? All right, perfect. So this is triangle 1. So down here at the bottom, I'm just going to label for triangle 1. You should have angle S is 41.8 degrees. I'm just rounding them to the nearest tenths place. Angle T is 108.2 degrees. And side T is 28.5 units. This would be all of your information for triangle 1. Are there any issues with the stuff that I have? Any questions? All right, let's talk about the second part of this. First part I'm not too worried about. It's the second part I'm worried about. So up here, let me scroll this up. My fourth step. After you're able to solve for that first triangle, I'm going back to your steps. You need to find your supplemental fruit angle, which means you need to take 180 and subtract it from your actual fruit angle. So we're going to take, for my supplemental fruit, we're going to take 180 and subtract it from your fruit angle, which is angle S that Joseph just gave me. So for my supplemental fruit angle, we're going to subtract it. All right, so we're going to subtract 41.808103 degrees. So let me use my calculator for it. So we're going to take 180 and subtract it from that last answer. So that's going to give me 138.19. Keep in mind that 19 isn't the last number. It's actually more. That's my supplemental fruit angle. Chelsea, am I done? Is that going to show me that I have two triangles? What else do I have to do from here? This is how you determine if you have a second triangle or not. Chelsea, tell us what to do. What do you have to look at? What are we looking at? We found this part. What do we do now to see if we have a second triangle? If what? Read the next part. If what? Plus, if the given angle is what? If it's greater than 180, what does that mean? Then you have one triangle, you're done. But if it's less than 180, that's when you have two triangles. So this is the next part to see if you're going to have it. So we're going to take that supplemental fruit angle plus the given. So when I say the given, I'm talking about the original picture that you have here, the given angle. So we're going to take that 138.19 and add it to 30 degrees. When you add both of those, you're going to get 168.19 degrees. And of course, that 19 is going to repeat. What this means is you have a second triangle. What this means is that you have a second triangle. So what you need to do is you need to find it. This is how we're going to find it. I'm going to actually draw, and I'm going to zoom out a bit. I'm going to draw my second triangle down here. I'm going to recopy almost the exact same thing from RST that I already have. RST. R is going to still have an angle of 30 degrees. Side R is still going to be 15 units. And side S is still going to be 20 units. The only difference is, remember how we found that supplemental fruit angle? That is now going to be my new angle S. So in this triangle, you don't have to find the angle opposite your given side again. You already found it. Your fruit angle, the original, was 41 degrees. Your new one for angle S will be 138.19. So down here, 138.19 degrees. Really quick, before you guys finish solving this. What quadrant is 41.8 degrees in? Quadrant 1. It's in the first quadrant. What about 138.19? Quadrant 2, so second quadrant. That's why I told you guys the stuff here. You're trying to find potentially, if there's two triangles, what angle is going to be in quadrant 1, what angle will be in quadrant 2. None of the angles should show up in quadrant 3 or 4 for your second triangle. All right, this is your second side, or second angle. Go ahead and find the rest of it. You're finding side T and angle T. I'll give you about 2 more minutes. So let's see what kind of answers you got. We already know that angle S is 138.19 degrees. We already know that. What we need to find is angle T and side T. So for step 6, this is 6, we're going to find side or angle T using the triangle sum theorem. So we're going to take R plus S plus T and set it equal to 180. So I'm going to go ahead and add both of those angles, and I'm going to subtract it. So let me go ahead and get my calculator. We're going to add 138.19 plus 30 degrees, and that's going to give me 168.19. So that's angle T. So we have that done. Now we need to find out, since we know angle T, we need to find side T. So in order to find side T, step 7, so find lowercase t. We can't use triangle sum theorem because triangle sum theorem is only for angles, but I could use law of sines because I already know angle R and side R, and now that I know angle T, I could find side T. So we're going to use law of sines. So I'm going to go ahead and write that out as sine of 30 degrees over 15. And we're going to set that equal to sine of 168.19 over little t. You can cross multiply or you can multiply t on each side. I'm just going to cross multiply. I feel like that's a little easier. And I'm going to divide both sides by sine because since t is what we're trying to solve for, I need to divide the opposite of multiplication, which is to divide by sine of 30 degrees. So t is going to equal, let me get my calculator. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. We're going to make this 15 times sine of the last answer. So I'm just going to hit control and the negative down here to actually get that last answer in. And I'm going to go ahead and divide that by sine of 30 degrees. So this is going to give me 6.14017. So t is that answer. I'm going to round at the very end. So this is my answer. And don't forget at the end, please, your units. All right, well, that's everything we have. So let me go ahead and write down for triangle 2 in this space everything that we were missing. Okay, so if I look back at the top, angle S is your supplemental fruit angle. Remember, we just took 180, subtracted it from the original fruit angle, which will give you your obtuse angle S. We talked about this on the very first page right here. Whenever you have two triangles, you're going to have two angles. One is going to be acute, the other is obtuse. We talked about this as well. 41 degrees is an acute angle. That was how we found our first triangle. 138 degrees is obtuse. That is why we have down here our second triangle. So angle S is 138 we'll round this to 2 degrees. Angle T is 168.2 degrees as well. And side T will give me 6.1 units. That would be your answer. make sure that you take time to practice, especially with how many steps you have for these types of problems. If you do not practice, you will not understand it. Make sure that you look through the rest of your packet. There's extra practice questions, more practice questions here. And on the last page with questions 11 through 16, these are, again, more practice. Keep in mind, all of the items that I'm highlighting in yellow are your answers. So this is an answer. All of these that I'm highlighting are your answers. So obviously, as you look at these questions, especially for question 13, it says you have these angles and sides, or you have these angles and sides. What do you think that probably means? Yep, means that you're going to have two triangles. So double check. As you notice here for questions 11 through 16, none of these on this page are a no triangle or a no solution. However, that might not be the case for these questions or these. So just make sure you actually take time to work through these problems to see if you understand the concept.